Happy Independence Day! A time for freedom! America! Freedom! Hot dogs, America! Freedom! Independence. And don't forget the freedom! I'm sporting my Snoopy American flag t-shirt. Don't forget Woodstock down there at the bottom. I don't know, I was thinking about a few things today. Recently I was at church. At the close of the meeting, a young man was invited to go up and say the prayer. In the prayer, he asked the Lord to bless those in the armed forces who are out protecting our freedoms and fighting for our liberties. And I don't want this to come off in the wrong way, but I had this moment where I was thinking about that. It seemed a little bit narrow to say something like that. Don't get me wrong, the people in the armed forces need our prayers. They're out there fighting for our country, they're risking their lives and putting it on the line, doing way more than I'm doing. To ask God to protect them and to bless them for what they're doing, that's a good prayer. That's a good prayer. But I think there's a blindness in America, and a prayer like that perpetuates that blindness. Abraham Lincoln once said, "America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves." I want you to think about that for a second. America is grown big enough and strong enough that troops are not fighting an enemy who's trying to invade and take over our country and take away our freedoms. That's not really who they're fighting. They kind of are in some ways, but that's not how we're going to fail. The people who are responsible for the preservation of our freedoms and our liberties are not limited to the people overseas shooting guns and blowing things up and risking their lives. They're the people down the street, next door. They're the people in office who you voted for. They are you and they are me. We are responsible for the preservation of our own freedoms. Not just them. You see, we're not fighting the revolution anymore. The people taking away our freedoms are the people that we vote into office. The scriptures teach us, and when we elect a governing body, we are responsible for the evil that ensues following that. That's why the Lord didn't want kings reigning over his people, because a king is responsible for himself because he's just placed there. But when you make elected bodies, judges, who are appointed by the people, now the people are responsible for the wickedness that comes about because of that official, because they're the ones that put him into office. The same principle applies today. We are the ones responsible for them. Just look at the people we have running for president right now, okay? You either have Two-Face or the Joker. That's basically who it's coming down to. Everyone likes to complain about how bad the situation is, picking between two evils. But you know what? I'm willing to bet that about 40% of Americans voted for either Trump or Hillary. And then about 10 to 15% voted for somebody else. And then the remaining half of Americans, including myself, honestly, didn't even vote. And as far as I'm concerned, the people who don't vote and don't participate are just as responsible for the people that do. Because the people who don't vote are the people who don't really care. Then we're left with a group of people who are voting, who really, 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 really care, and they're a bit radical and extreme. And so we wind up with two extremes, and we get no middle ground because none of the middle ground people think that it's worth it. I mean, I tried to vote. Like, I tried to go to my primaries, but I was down at Snow College, and I didn't know until I showed up that you're not allowed to vote if you don't live there. And I'm not a permanent resident of Ephraim. Nobody's a permanent resident of Ephraim. So I wasn't able to vote. It was just like really dumb. So I tried to vote, but I just wasn't able to. When the young man said that prayer and said to please bless those protecting our freedoms and our liberties, I had this epiphany. It just really hit me that they're not the only ones we need to be praying for. We need to be praying for those who are already in office, and for those who are preparing to be in office, and especially for those voting to put them into office. Do you think presidential candidates are allowed to vote? Anyway, so I just wanted to preach a little bit and go off on that rant. America's not going to be taken over by an outside enemy. It's crumbling from the inside right now. And the reason for that is because the vast majority of people feel like they don't matter when they really do. And they're not protecting the freedoms that they themselves have been given. This isn't the revolution anymore. This isn't the Civil War. We're not wrestling against flesh and blood. We're wrestling against principalities and powers, against wickedness in high places, spiritual darkness in this world. We're wrestling against ourselves. So vote, dang it. Participate. Fight for your freedoms, bro. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own freedoms. Period. America. Peace out.